Hi. The other day, a client reflected to me that she was grateful that I operate my business and my life at the rhythm that I do, because she said, if you didn't do it that way, and she wants to kind of like jump into her business endeavors. And I want to talk about that kind of constitution of person, because we tend to be an all or nothing kind of crew where we just want results and we want to dive in and we want it to be quick, but then our circuits blow and then self-sabotage happens. So she says to me this reflection, I'm so glad that you do it this way so that you can stay so good at what you do for me. And I said to her, and she said, you would just be like every other therapist out there if you didn't do it this way. And I said, no, I want to get something very clear. I would not be able to even be a therapist. See, we're people that actually were taught very young to override our own thresholds, right? And if you're not in that like maxed out zone, you're not productive, you're lazy, you're a bitch, whatever it is. If you're not maxed out, super busy and overproductive, and you haven't reached your threshold and haven't had your boundaries completely overridden by productivity, by somebody else's desires of you, then you are failing, right? So she is my kind of breed. She was raised in that way. And what I wanted to reflect to her in that desire to quickly move forward in this is that if I try to do what I do any other way, it would not be sustainable, right? We are a crash and kind of burn being, right? And I don't want to do that with my life's work, and I definitely don't want to do that with my family. I'm raising 4 kids right now. They're all at home, homeschooling throughout this process. So I have an infant all the way to a almost 17-year-old right now, and everything in between. And if I want to be there for them in the way that I wanted somebody to be there for me, I have to do it this way. And if I want to be there for my business the way that I want somebody to show me to be there for people, because that's the thing, and this is what I want to get to, is the healthy relationships of the codependent. And we're not very good at that. So mix mommy issues into this, or daddy issues, depending, but I'm going to speak from my experience because I trust that a lot of what I'm about to say is going to resonate with you on some level, and you can apply it to your own life to some degree. So I particularly have this friendship that I've had since I was a child. I love this person so much, it's stupid. Like, the care that I have for her is insane. And we were aligned back in the day, although we didn't know it, because we were both being raised by narcissists. And we were each other's ride or die, right? Like, we got it. We were like, what is going on here? And although the symptoms were different for both of us and the people who were raising us, there's a particular frequency that now that I've done the work and found the tools to move beyond, I realize you're there, right? Like, I'm not the only one. She's not the only other person. But for us, we were. And for her, because I have moved out and found the tools to not be in that frequency, not even in that matrix, like I can't even, no, like I'm not interested in that sense of inequality, that sense of like always drama. We're not there, but I love this person. And she wants me to be her person like that, even, 30 years later. And I do that for people on a daily basis, and I make a lot of money doing that for people on a daily basis because it's actually really hard, right? Like, those dramatic type frequency relationships that I assist at people getting out of, I have to be honest with her about my own boundaries in. So boundaries, which everybody in my field talks about, are great, except you will lose everything that you love by implementing them. And I do mean this, and this is okay, because thank God you'll love what comes after also. But the truth is, if you are a staunch codependent, a majority of the people in your life are going to bounce when you set a boundary, even just one, right? Because 1, you're probably not going to know how to set it. 2, even if you do set it, you're going to feel the guilt behind it, and then they're going to want to subconsciously make you, play on that guilt if they were playing into those relationships benefiting them before. So this one particular person, I live a life where I'm raising 4 kids. I don't stay up past 9 o'clock at night for the most part, unless I'm laying in bed and staying up past 9 o'clock at night. I'm not doing the things that her and I used to do as, you know, self-sabotage or escapism anymore. And she still is, and she will call me while she's in that space. So I haven't responded to her in a long time. I also, in the past 3 years, have had 3 of my children in the hospital multiple times, had a child myself. You know, we have been through chaos over these past 3 years. Obviously, COVID hit. We're all transitioning in a million ways. So to be fair, I've been hiding out in my desire to, as we, right? This is gonna be for all of us. As I've created the inner space for myself, right? We have this, I want somebody to be my ride or die. I want somebody else to be the last person I can count on. My God, I lived on that for years, and I wanted to be that person for everyone I knew. Like, I wanted to be the one who saw them through, and no matter what they did, I was gonna be the one who didn't abandon them, right? I was this person for this person, right? I am this person, and I don't want to be called at 3 in the morning, and I don't want to be called only when somebody's drunk, because for me, I'm just learning. I've just expanded this territory in myself, right? And this is why they say relationships go crazy when you change, because for these past 3 years, through all that I have been through, I've been quiet. I've been expansive but quiet. And I have to first learn to carry the territory of me that now knows nobody else is gonna be my ride or die. That's in here, right? I have assigned that role to people, and that role has left me on my knees, usually on a floor next to somebody's bathtub that may or may not be my own, sobbing, abandoned by my own belief that they would care about me more than I cared about myself, and that they would see me through no matter what, because I didn't have it in me to do that for myself, and I believed that the only thing that made me a good person was being the person who was willing to do that for somebody else. So I finally was like, okay, I have to have this conversation and be very real with this person, because she lives across the country. So, you know, us not talking for a long time was always normal, but this particular time she's saying, like, I needed you, let's talk. And at this point, I also, in my ability to either discern who's coming in and who's not coming in, I need people who also can make room for the new territory in myself that I've claimed. And I have not been great at doing this for other people all of the time, specifically in intimate relationships. When it comes to clients, it's been very easy for me, but watching somebody change that you have prescribed this particular way of being to can be a little confronting for the ego, right? It's a little stunning. So I've changed in a lot of ways, and I have to say to this person, call me when you're not drunk, okay? That's all I had to say. But I didn't want to hurt her because I knew she needed me. So I just didn't say it. So I just didn't answer. And that's reasonable because it's 3 in the morning, so why would I answer? But I also didn't necessarily call back the next morning to rescue like I would have. And I call to talk, and it's in the middle of the afternoon, so I'm sure like this is gonna be the perfect time, and she's drunk. And I tell her what my truth is, which is like, I so love you, and I want to have conversations with you that feel grounded and reciprocal when you're not drunk. And she was not a fan of that, let me just say that. And I said, I didn't tell you this because I didn't want to hurt you. And she said, well, you did hurt me. And let this be the lesson in boundaries, right? That had I set the boundary, at least it would have been my authenticity hurting her, right? Instead of my shame that was quiet and didn't want to speak because I didn't want to hurt her. At least it would have been real, right? So the boundary was set, and she said, so you don't want to be friends anymore? I'm like, that's not even close, but of course she's drunk, so I can't, you know, it is what it is. I have to come up with a way to talk to her another time. But the thing is that we didn't know back in the day that we were aligned because we were raised by narcissists. And I didn't even know this until I was in practice on my own for years. I did not even understand that I was working with codependents who were raised by narcissists. So be excited. I'm definitely going to be coming out with a parenting course for children of narcissists, and that should be fun, ideally next year. So we didn't know that that was our aligned frequency. I know that now. I know that there are other people who align to that frequency too, so I'm not alone. She does not know that yet. So of course, my worst fear is happening. I'm the person who is abandoning somebody. She's saying to me, you don't care about me. You don't care if you never talk to me again. It's not true. All I want is to have a conversation with somebody when they're not drunk. That's really all I want. It's like that simple. And my old self would have taken it so personally, right? If somebody would have said that to me, I would have felt so much shame. I never would have wanted to talk to them again. But in this new place, I want to keep her, right? Like I want to keep her because I love her. And this is where they say relationships get tricky when you change, because I can't keep her in the way of like, I always wanted to keep her and keep her safe and make sure nobody, you know, like of course, I immediately am like, I'm going to help her take care of her children. Like all of these things are going through my head. Like she needs help and it has to be me. And then I have to pause and I go, she can't be kept. She's her own person. And her being abandoned by your belief, her belief that you were going to be her ride or die when you're no longer interested in riding or dying. You just want to be at this new level of normal where that matrix of insanity is not running your life. I live in this world right now, which is insane to me. And if I was talking to somebody else who would never, if somebody else said this, I would be like, I hate you because you don't know anything about life. But I literally can walk through my house and skip around and sing insanely stupid songs about how much I love my family and how much I love to belong in my home. All I ever wanted was a sense of safety. All I ever wanted was a sense of home. And I always wanted to give people around me that, right? Because that's what I wanted. I wanted them to feel like you can feel at home where Stace is. And I still want people to feel that way. But I can no longer do that at the expense of giving up that frequency where I can walk through my own home and go, I am all here, I belong here, right? And my old self would have just always had people coming in and me being like, okay, you can feel at home, and me being uncomfortable because of that. So boundaries are going to make it so that we are lonely for a little bit, right? Maybe for a lot of a bit, especially, and I'm an advocate for not really implementing boundaries right away when you come awake and you go, oh my God, I've been steamrolled my whole life, because you don't know how. And that frequency of submission is going to be attempt to be overlaid by a facade of dominance. And that's just going to be like, straw man, blow you right over, right? And then you're going to be a yippy little dog complaining, still nobody hears you. Boundaries should be first acquired on the inside, where you can go, I'm all in here. Now I know my preference. It's just a preference. It's just a preference. A boundary is a way of saying, hey, I just want you to call me when you're not drunk. It's only a preference. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about me. It's like, I do like the scent of that candle. I don't like the scent of that candle. I don't know why. It doesn't matter why. I don't need justification. It's just, this is what's true about me. And if I would have given her that truth months ago, maybe I'd be in a different place right now. But I was ashamed because I didn't want to hurt her. So when it comes to this new matrix, see, the thing is that and people who were not raised by a narcissist will not understand what I'm about to say, but this is deeply true. In my opinion, experience, and belief, and professionally, this is what I see. If you are raised by a narcissist and you default to the side of codependency, you do not understand equality in relationships, and it is by no fault of your own. By and large, you might have been, if you look at the animal kingdom, this was my experience. Somehow they required me to be the leader of the pack, right? Like, it's like, oh, she's gonna cause the ruckus. She's gonna lead, and nobody else was doing it. And it was bad that I was doing it. I wasn't being a good leader, but I was 5, right? You don't know how to be in equal relationships, and especially if you're in I feel very bad about this dynamic. If you are an only child raised by a narcissist, if you're an only child and you don't even have somebody else to see what you're seeing and question whether it's insane or not. So if we're not great at equality, there's gonna be this period where we're gonna lose friendships because we have to actually find in ourselves, like, where are our edges? And how can we actually become equal with people, instead of what the default then is? Lots of people who were raised by narcissists find each other, and then there's this dynamic of save and savior. Save and savior. And it might flip-flop, right? It might be like 1 year, she's my savior, the next year I'm her savior. but the programming and the pattern is the same frequency. And there's an inferiority and a superiority to that, and the roles flip and it's inconsistent, right? And then there's probably some sense of like owing somebody, or like, you know, having something on somebody, or whatever it is. It's lame. That's not the world I want to live in anymore in my relationships, especially, and this is the kicker, right? If you were raised by a narcissistic mother, you are going to default very likely to the tendency of struggling to have honest, real relationships with women, right? I could do an entire course on that alone. Just women who were raised by narcissists being in relationships with other women. It's insanity, usually. And the thing is that this place that I've strove to come to, I've gotten the tools. I want to hand her and everybody I know all of the tools. But I acquired those tools, and it took me sleepless nights and countless years to be on the search. I can't just be giving away my bows and arrows, right? It's like, I can teach you how to do that, but it doesn't seem like that's what's going on here. And I also no longer want to be in a relationship in which I am the savior, or I have to be superior or inferior to be in that relationship. And the truth is, if you put two codependents together, they're going to have that flip-flopping dynamic where one's going to feel superior, one's going to feel inferior a majority of the time. And to disrupt that pattern alone, to move it to a place of equality, is going to be like somebody hitting a brick wall, right? Probably for both people. One of them is just likely more prepared because they're asking for it. So, that's my point in saying all of this, is that in me not being the one who abandoned people, which is like, I always wanted to be I would not abandon people. I was abandoned. I didn't want that to be true. I didn't want to be that person who did that. I would stick through it to the end, no matter how much, how many punches I had to take to prove to you you were lovable. Because I wanted somebody to do that to me, take all my punches and still say, you're lovable. Guess what? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. And that is the hard realization that it took me 36 years to come to. And I'm watching people that I love feel abandoned by the belief that I'm not that person for them, because they haven't assumed that role themselves of becoming that person who is their own ride or die, who is their own relax and rest, who is their own I have your back girl. Right? Because the truth is, I always wanted all of those people to love me and show me that I was lovable when I didn't believe that I was. And I wanted all of those people to say, no matter what, I'm going to love you. I couldn't even say that to myself, right? I could say that about other people, which is sad, because that left me an open, gaping wound for people to just dump into, right? And I can't even love them like that. If it's all them pouring into me, I can't be in the equation. And that's not cool. So, in me not wanting to be the person who abandoned people, I had to sit back when somebody is telling me that I have abandoned them and that I was that person, and I'm not even that person, right? I'm not that person. And I had to say, I'm not that person. I'm not that person. I will be there for you, but you cannot ascribe me to be the person who is going to be there through every single thing with zero conditions just because I love you. I can love lots of people and think they're douchey and not want them in my life and say okay, you're there. I love you, and I love you enough to know that you're gonna have to stay on the periphery of my territory if this isn't gonna get somehow weirdly hurtful, right? So I used to ascribe that as a personal responsibility and a personal thing. I was abandoning this person. But when I realize now, in having somebody reflect to me my worst fear, and somebody that I actually love and don't feel like I'm abandoning, I feel like I'm trying to be my real self with, is that she is abandoned not by me, but a belief in who I have been and who she wants me to be. And if I am not that thing, then I am the abandoned one, right? And this is where these relationships get tricky, because I don't want to not have that person in my life. And boundaries for sure created this dynamic But boundaries are more important to me now in a healthy world where I can walk around my house and say, that's my front door. And you're welcome when I say you're welcome, but you're gonna have to, step out when it's time for you to go. That sense of, I can own my space. I first had to carry it myself, and it's been quiet in all of these years trying to figure out, like watching your kid almost die, watching your other kid be born and then almost die, and trying to figure out that like pause. We're in COVID, there's this insane pause collectively, and it's quiet, and trying to figure out that like, where are we gonna land? It has left me quiet. So learning how to carry that quiet space back into the world and back into the relationships with the people that I love has to be essential. I first had to carry that though. I used to expect people to carry me if I couldn't carry myself, because I expected myself to carry people when they couldn't carry themselves. So that gave me an out, because I could then shit the bed, right? I could then be like, oh, actually I've maxed myself out, which goes back to the beginning. I've maxed myself out. I can't do this anymore. I need a savior. And the cycle would go, I'm always saving until I max myself out on saving. Now I need a savior. And that would usually fall on one or two people in my life. Or I would want it to, and then I would have to swallow all of those feelings of like, why aren't they being that person? And I can't expect them to be that person. And oh my God, do they love me? Do I love them? How does this go? It's complicated and tricky when your inner terrain becomes expansive and you have to walk on it. And you have to look at it yourself before you can invite people into that territory with you. You have to look at it objectively, like, who have I been in the role? Who has that person honestly been in the role? So it's not that my greatest fear has always been, I don't want to abandon people. But after being a person who's been abandoned, in that way, I was never abandoned. I was given the gift of, kicking out the crutches, so I had to learn to walk. It's great. I'm grateful. But I now know that it was my belief that I was abandoned by. It was my belief I was abandoned by. It was not that I was abandoned. So I have to look at somebody that I love and recognize that in her, that she's strong, capable, and that right now she's struggling because a belief that she had is shattered. I'm still here. I'm not here in the same way that her belief, held up for me to bargain with. I'm not here in that way, but I'm still here. But right now, she's not, because she feels abandoned by a belief. So if you are coming across this, like, boundaries are gonna hurt and it's gonna suck and I'm gonna be the person who abandons and I never wanna be that person, I just wanna reflect to you that it won't be you as a person doing the abandoning. It will be that this person and you yourself, if you're still waiting for somebody to be your savior. You have a belief that one day will abandon you. That belief will abandon you, because nobody can be your savior forever, right? So we have to learn to carry our inner territory on our own. And then when we've carried that, we even know it, that's when, oh God, what was that sound? Something crazy is going on up there. That's when we reintegrate into the world with boundaries, because we've actually filled ourselves, know ourselves, carried ourselves long enough to go, okay, this is my edge, this is my preference. And only then, I think, is when we should actually be like, not enforcing boundaries, but sharing those preferences with the people that we love. So I hope that this was helpful for you today. There is a whole different world out there where people who have been normal their whole lives, who we probably used to hate, they just have easy, normal relationships where friendships aren't insane and dramatic, and celebrations are literally celebrations, not like bitch fests, and where you're allowed to have fun. It doesn't have to be a crisis to connect. It's a whole new world, and it's way bigger, and I used to think that like our world was like the real world, right? Like that insane imprisonment of being in a hell in the human experience was like real. And there's other people who think that that is literal insanity. And I've kind of crossed the bridge to be like, whoa, they're both very real in this same exact world. Like you can have an entirely different life in an entirely different relationship with yourself and with the people around you and with your home and with your everything. But it requires you having your own back first, you having the will to get the tools, to create the tools, to use the tools, to move forward with the tools, to trust yourself with the tools, to teach the tools, whatever it is. It requires you to be your own hunter, as a woman, as a friend, as whatever, as a partner. And then, you know that you can hunt. And then you're not looking for who's gonna kill you, who's gonna ally with you so that you guys can hunt together because you need somebody. On a primal oneness in a sovereign level, you go, okay, I am my only ride or die. I'm the only hunter I can rely on. It's not a negative thing. God gave me myself, which is amazing. God gave me myself, and of course I rely on the connections that I have with other people, but that's all just a part of myself. And when I am my own sovereign being fuller, it's so much easier to connect with those other selves that come on in, but with boundaries and with the expanse, to be in more of a, I wouldn't call the release from hell freedom. It's just release. It's not even freedom. It's just like, it's the exhale that can go on and on and on and on. It's amazing, and you can have it. You can have it. You don't have to imprison yourself to being the only person in the world who will never abandon the world while you're still looking for somebody to come and save you. That is hell. You're allowed to be your own person, and you're allowed to have your own back. It's necessary. Nobody's gonna have it more than you. For years and years and years, I wasted my mental energy trying to get people to love me so that they could have my back more than me. And not trying to get people to love me, but like hoping that the people who were in my life had my back more than I did. It's never gonna be the case for any of us. So it's taken me a very long time. Some people might say I'm very immature, but the truth is when you're raised without anybody having your back, right? It's a different frequency. Let me say this real quick. I know I'm like running, I'm going, this is longer than usual, but I was listening to a Ben Shapiro interview with Lewis Howes. And I don't listen to like many podcasts or things like that. As I've said, I've been pretty quiet in my space. And I heard it, and it was actually really interesting because Ben Shapiro has great points. But one of the things that I think there's this disconnect that it's hard to get to for people who were raised like us is this, right? Like he says his parents always taught him things. He asked questions, his parents listened, gave him honest answers. If they didn't know, they researched together. He said that his parents always made his teachers wrong if he was struggling or having behavioral problems. When you're raised like us, everything's your fault. Oh, that dude left you? What'd you do? Oh, you don't even have any friends. How could you have friends? Your teacher told you that you should do something, then you need to listen. The doctor said that you're having a temper tantrum and not a seizure. So you're having a temper tantrum and not a seizure, right? Like my experience has been that where, well, you're gonna have to hate your boss one day, so you better get used to hating your first grade teacher who's so mean to you that you throw up and shit yourself every morning before you go to school. Right? Despite the doctor saying that it was all stress induced, you're gonna have to deal with it in first grade because one day a boss is gonna hate you and you're gonna hate your boss and you're gonna have to deal with it. We didn't get raised by Ben Shapiro's parents, who has something to fall. He has an energetic being, which is awesome. Everybody needs what he got. He had something to fall back on. I was sitting next to a fire with my brother-in-law and my mom recently, and my brother-in-law said, "Why are you so afraid of cops?" Because I was saying that we need to teach energetic education to stop all of this separation and divide. And I said that every single time I even see cop lights, I'm like shaking, bugging out. And it takes a good 5 minutes for my nervous system to calm down. And he was like, "I always got arrested when I was younger. I never cared." And I was like, "Yeah, but the difference is," and my mom's sitting right there, you had parents that would come bail you out. I had parents who were threatening to send me to the cops, right? And this is also this friend's experience of like, just let me throw you away. You're trash. Let me just throw you away to somebody else who wants to deal with you. Your problem. That was our experience. And when you live a life not having something to fall back on, you live your life looking for something to fall back on until somebody gently nudges you and says, "Hey, your back's up against the wall now. Your back's up against the wall. Now you gotta come back out. It's all you that has to come back out, right? So I think that Ben Shapiro has a lot of points in his like, okay, we should be like autonomous and people should be, you know, he has beliefs about just people being sovereign beings and being able to express themselves in ways where they're not shut down. And I find it so interesting that everybody who talks about inclusion wants to exclude him, right? And I think he has a really interesting pivotal point in the conversation. So when I hear his points though, I go, nobody who's on the frequency, who's raised the way that I have been, would even comprehend what he's saying, because it feels so distant to have somebody say, you need to take responsibility for yourself. We're like, we've been doing that our whole lives. What are you talking about? I've been looking my whole life for one person to take responsibility for me. And he's had a family that takes responsibility for him. He had something to fall back on. So there's no fault of our own when we're psychically still in the chase, looking for a safer relationship to play out that terrible relationship that we had in childhood with other adults or other people who equally needed to conquer that pattern. But people in our world who've felt like we had to be responsible for ourselves and for our parents in a lot of ways, and for the things around us, or we were made responsible, we were punished for like if anything went wrong, right? We don't want responsibility. Like codependency ultimately is, I don't want to be responsible, right? And that's us going, okay, here you are, backs against the wall. You got to come on out. You're only responsible for coming back on out and like figuring out your own edges. That's all you're responsible for. Everything else will come into place, right? So we do ultimately need to be responsible for ourselves, like Ben Shapiro talks about. But I imagine that his delivery is really hard for people like us because he had people who loved him. He wasn't thrown away like trash. So if everybody was raised the way he was raised, it's easy to say that, but not everybody is. So, but his point still stands. And it was an interesting interview. It was Ben Shapiro and Lewis Howes. I thought it was interesting. So I hope this was helpful. I know I kind of said a lot. And let me tell you one thing that was fun that happened today. I got these earrings. They're so cute. My friend Jen made them. Chris bought them for me for my birthday in May. I lost one the third day. Since then, my partner has redone the floors. Like, our house has been literally cleaned a million times because we got the kitchen done, and there's no way that this one, 3 days after a day in June, has been missing. And my belief has been, I'm gonna save the other one for when that comes up. I didn't say like if it does, when it comes up. It's November, the middle of November, and it was just sitting in the middle of my living room floor today. So let that be some hope that if you are missing something in your life, that you are prepared for when it returns, not if it returns. And ideally that today is the day that it shows up, if that's what you will. All right, bye guys.